Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily if you're new, and I have not posted in a very long time, but something crazy happened to me a few months ago, and I want to share the story of breaking my foot, having Lisfranc surgery, what that all looked like, because I have heard people tell this story a couple times on YouTube, but there's not a lot of videos, and I just want to share insight and what to expect if you have the same injury as me, because a lot of the stories I've heard are very similar, and if you can relate and I can encourage somebody, give you what to expect, that's what I want to do here today. So I'm in my brother's bedroom because I'm staying at my parents' house, which started with this injury 4 months ago and has continued because it is snowing on the Gulf Coast, okay? It's snowing. There is snow outside my window right now. Crazy times that we're living in. I have a tea, and I realize that I look like a Rosemary Beach advertisement right now because I have a Rosemary Beach mug and sweatshirt. It's a great place. So without more rambling, let's get into the story of how I broke my foot and had Lisfranc surgery. The story starts on October 5th, 2024. I had a work event at a shooting center. It was a clay shoot fundraiser that we do every year. It was our biggest event of the year. I am event coordinator for a local college, and I was nervous because I have a lot of responsibility on days like this, but ultimately it's nothing I haven't handled before. But I was really stressed out about wanting to do a good job, and I think that is part of why I fell. But we had this huge truck that was like a moving truck. It was a big white truck that the college uses to transport stuff from across campus or across the city. They brought out all of our equipment for the event, and that morning we arrive at like 6 a.m. It's still dark outside, and we had to unload coolers from the truck and then get that truck out of there. My boss had given me the key the day before, and she was like, your first responsibility this day is get the coolers off the truck, get the truck out of there. And she didn't say I had to move the truck, but it turned out there weren't a lot of people around that I felt like would say yes if I asked them to. So I'm just thinking, move the truck, move the truck. And I get in it, and I'll see if I can find a picture of a similar truck to make you understand that it wasn't just like an F-150. This is like a moving truck. There's a thing on the back that goes up and down. It's huge. I would never move a truck like that, but it was supposed to be like 10 feet. So I get up in it, I look around, it's pitch black. I'm like, I am not doing this. I'm crazy. I'm gonna find somebody else to do this. So I'm like trying to go as fast as I can. I go to hop out of the truck, fall. There must have been a root. Now that, you know, I've thought about this for 4 months now, and people have said there must have been something on the ground that you tripped on. I don't know, never went back to look at the spot, but I fell. The way that my foot came down, it must have crunched. I heard a crack, and next thing I know, I'm on the ground. I'm moaning and crying, and one of my coworkers found me. Nobody watched it happen. She found me, called my boss over. They got me under the pavilion, and all I knew was I have never felt worse pain in my entire life. It was definitely pain 10 out of 10. One of my coworkers drove me in my car to the closest ER, which was not affiliated with one of the major hospitals in town. It was the next county over from where I live because we were at this event out of town. And the head boss, the executive director, was like, you need to go to ER. So I was like, I need to go to ER. I had never had an x-ray before. I had never been to ER before. I had had very little medical issue in my entire life at that point, and now I have had a lot more. But they come in and they do the x-ray, and then we're waiting for the results, and I'm really curious because I heard a crack. I'm like, something is fractured, that there's no other way around it. I heard a crack, so something's fractured. But if it's not, I must be a big baby because I am in excruciating pain, and if there's nothing broken, I must just be a big baby about pain with no pain tolerance. So the doctor comes back in and he says, you have really strong bones because nothing is broken. And I was shocked, and I was like, okay, cool. He was like, it's just a contusion, which means severe bruising. He's like, you'll be fine to walk on it in 2 to 4 days. And I was like, that is great. I don't see that happening, but you're the doctor, so I don't know any better, and I'm gonna believe you. Something to note is they didn't wrap my foot at this ER. They didn't give me pain meds. They wrote me a prescription, but they didn't give me anything on site. I had to go pick it up, and it ended up being like 3 hours before I got a pain med. Worst pain of my life, 10 out of 10. They didn't do anything. They didn't give me crutches. They rolled me in on a wheelchair. They rolled me out on a wheelchair. I don't know how I got into the car. I ended up going back to my house and washing my hair. I sat on like a 2-step bench in the shower. My mom helped me hobble into the house on her shoulder, and I have 3 steps up into my house. It was a whole mess. But we made it through. I got my prescription. I decided to stay at my parents' house because I couldn't walk. And I didn't know that I stayed at my parents' house that night, and I didn't know I wouldn't be back for 4 months nearly, but that is how it happened. And my good friend Leah, shout out to her, had some crutches at her house because her mom had had an ankle injury a couple years before, and her brother had just had, I believe, ACL and meniscus surgery, and he was fresh off the crutches, and I knew they had some. I was like, could you please bring me crutches because I cannot walk? So she dropped them by that evening, and I had crutches. So 4 days after this, on October 9th, I had not been able to put weight on my foot. They had told me at the ER, if it doesn't improve in 3 to 5 days, then go see your primary care doctor. And I am normally not the person to go see the doctor, but this morning, it was the Wednesday after, and I woke up and my toes looked a little bluish. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. I was worried about circulation problems. So I made an appointment at the primary care office, which my physician wasn't available because she is not in the office that day of the week. So I made an appointment with the other primary care. He's actually an MD at that office, which I feel like was the Lord's favor because he ended up getting me on the trajectory to what I needed. And at this point, I might insert pictures, but my foot had ballooned up. It was incredibly swollen, and it was purple, blue, yellow, green everywhere, like up my ankle. The bottom of it was purple, black, blue, bruised, which ended up not going away for about 3 months until I started walking on it, which I now know the bruise on the bottom of your foot is a major indicator of a Lisfranc injury. It often accompanies that injury, which at the time I didn't know what that meant, but now I do. So I go see this primary care doctor. My grandma went with me. She drove me. I was able to drive because the injury was to my left foot, but I had opted out of driving because there was no way to cover my foot at this point. I didn't get a boot for like 3 weeks. Anyway, I go to this primary care doctor. He takes one look at my foot and he says, they said nothing was fractured. You had an x-ray because this looks more consistent with bruising from falling from a 1-story building than falling 2 feet out of a truck. He said he found it hard to believe that there was no fracture, and he was like, I'm going to go ahead and order you an MRI so that we can confirm whether there's a fracture. I'm going to order it stat. I'm also going to order a boot, which it turned out that you couldn't get a boot until there was confirmation of a fracture because your insurance wouldn't pay for it. So I didn't get a boot that day. But he ordered an MRI, and he said to come back in a week and we would go over the MRI results. So on October 11th, which was 2 days later, it was a Friday, I went for the MRI at the local hospital where I ended up having surgery. It was fine. They say it's going to take a long time and you have to sit completely still. It was kind of hard because my foot would tremble a little bit, and when you're thinking about holding still, it's harder to hold still, but we got through it, and it only took about 15 minutes. That was good. So I go back to the doctor on October 16th, which is a Wednesday. This is now a week and a half post-injury, and I have not gone back to work at this point. And it's important to note that this was a work-related injury, and we had done an accident report the Monday after it happened. It happened on a Saturday. They filed an incident report on the Monday, and nobody ever contacted me to tell me, how do you proceed with workers' comp? So I just figured I go and do what I need to do and then send them the bills. That is not how it works. There ended up being an almost problem where I almost had to get a lawyer, I thought, and I got really anxious and scared because when I finally got in touch with the workers' comp people, they were like, we'll pay for the initial ER visit because it was an emergency and it happened on a unusual work day. You don't usually work on Saturdays. The college was closed, but you cannot have the rest of them, the MRI, the primary care visits. We will not reimburse for those or cover those because you didn't go through us. And I was like, nobody told me, I didn't know, blah, blah, blah. I read the handbook, it just said to report it to HR, no one contacted me. Anyway, they ended up calling back the next day and saying that I didn't have to worry because they would cover it because all of the doctors that I went to ended up being in network. Anyway, I go back to the doctor on October 16th, and I remember thinking, I don't even know what to pray. I'm nervous. I just want answers. I don't know what I'm going to do if they say I have fractures. I guess I should pray that nothing is fractured, but I just didn't really know what to think. And the doctor ended up confirming 3, possibly 4 fractures in my foot, which kind of made me feel like, okay, I'm not crazy, that I'm just not a baby who can't walk on a bruised foot. So I'm going to read them off of my computer because I can't ever remember which ones were broken. The first and second metatarsal, the medial cuneiform bone, and possibly the 4th metatarsal. So the one that connects to your big toe, your second toe, and then your pinky toe, I guess. And then the medial cuneiform bone is the next bone coming up from your toe. You have your tarsals are your toes, your metatarsal comes after that, and then your medial cuneiform is the next one. And there's a ligament called the Lisfranc ligament, which at this time I didn't know till I went to an ortho doctor. The Lisfranc ligament connects, I believe, your first metatarsal to your medial cuneiform bone, and that holds up the arch of your foot. So if that ligament goes kaput, then the arch of your foot goes kaput, and you're in really bad shape. So the primary care doctor tells me that I have these fractures. He was like, but I don't know if you need surgery. One of those bones requires surgery oftentimes, but I can't say. So I'm going to refer you to an orthopedic specialist, and you're going to see what they say because I don't know how to proceed with this. You need to go to someone who has more knowledge of that than I do. And after that was when all the stuff with workers' comp came out. And also I was leaving town the next Monday to go to San Antonio for my brother's Air Force basic graduation. And I was not going to miss this trip for nothing. But I was like, it would be really beneficial if I could get into an ortho doctor before I had to go on this trip, because then potentially it could be in a boot or even a cast beforehand and not have to just use an ACE wrap while I'm in another state going around all these places. That would be really helpful. So long story short, with workers' comp, all of that stuff happens with them. They're not going to cover it, and then they are going to cover it. And I had gotten a call before we got situated with the workers' comp at another hospital in town. There are 3 main hospitals where I live, but I had gotten a call from a doctor that was trying to set up an appointment with me for ortho. They found out it was work related, and they were like, we can't do this. You have to go through workers' comp. And that was when I got connected with them. So I could have potentially gone to a completely different doctor, and it turned out to not be the case, but workers' comp hooked me up with this other doctor, and I got to go the Friday before I went out of town, which was like the day after I got workers' comp, because my adjuster is the most amazing adjuster ever. Because I was told with workers' comp, sometimes they don't like to cover things and they like to get out of paying for stuff, and you have to advocate for yourself and all that stuff. I had no issue of the sort. My adjuster is on top of it. She looks out for me. She got me the best doctor, I believe, in the area. Something about where I live is, in my area, there is Andrews Institute, which is where a lot of professional athletes from all over the world come when they have injuries to get treatment. And the hospital that I go to for treatment is in the Andrews network. And so my orthopedic doctor is with Andrews Institute. His name is Dr. Lavacek. If you are on the Gulf Coast and you need an orthopedic doctor, I believe he is the best. The reviews speak for themselves. Anyway, so I got an appointment with him. When I go to him, he explains everything about Lisfranc ligaments and how it controls the arch of your foot. And if that fails, your foot fails. And he was like, but looking at your MRI, I don't think you need surgery. And I was like, oh, what a relief. That's so great. He was like, I'm not saying you don't need surgery. I'm saying I don't think you do. And I was like, okay. So he's like, I'm going to send you for a CT scan. So here's another imaging thing that I have never done and now I have. And that's gonna verify everything we need to know. He was like, if it was a perfect world, you would have gone for a CT instead of an MRI and skipped that step. But this is where we are now. I'm gonna order you a CT scan and then contact you with the results. So I was like, am I good to travel? Like, what should I do? He's like, okay, we're gonna get you in a boot. You can travel wherever you want, just don't put weight on your foot. And I was like, cool, doc, got it. So I get in a boot. This was great because I felt protected. I still couldn't walk on my foot, still had to use crutches, but I felt better. I go to San Antonio on Monday. While I'm in Texas, I got a call set up the CT for October 30th. So the week I came back, I go get my CT scan and I ended up getting a cold. So I stayed home from work the day after that, which was October 31st. I'm laying in bed right here with a cold and I get a call from my doctor saying your CT results are in. You need surgery. He's like, that Lisfranc ligament that I talked to you about, you have the injury that I was concerned that you had and you're gonna need surgery. And I was like, well, he didn't force me into surgery. He was just like, you could possibly heal without surgery, but I think it would be the best option for you because usually these things don't heal up well on their own. So now my brain is spinning. I'm like devastated. I'm like, I thought I was going to be okay by Christmas, maybe by Thanksgiving, because they say bones take 6 weeks to heal, blah, blah, blah. Now I'm starting from scratch. I've wasted a month being on crutches and I was devastated, but he was like, today is Thursday. I can get you in on Tuesday. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is in less than a week. This is crazy. So the actual surgery that I had, I'm going to read off of my computer because again I will say it wrong. Open reduction, internal fixation of the left foot fraction dislocation, or the acronym ORIF. If you want to know what that means, you can skip this part if you don't like graphic stuff. But there ended up being 3 incisions on my foot, 2 on the top and 1 on the side. And what they do is they open up the middle part, they hold it open with a medical tool while you're under anesthesia, and they go inside and they find the gap between your bones and they crank it shut with a crank. And good thing you're asleep for this, you're not going to remember a thing and you can't feel anything, but I watched a YouTube video because I'm too curious for my own good. They crank it shut and then they make an incision on the side of your foot, and on the other side of the first incision they stick a tiny pole through your foot that has a screw attached to it. And I'm not a doctor, so if I get any of this wrong, don't sue me. I'm not claiming to be a doctor, but this is what I watched in a video. And then they make sure it's in the right place with something that looks like an ultrasound, but it's not called an ultrasound. And then they pull it back through your foot and set the screws in place. I had 3 out of 10 severity in my case, which is on the low end of a severe fracture. A severe Lisfranc injury can keep you from ever playing sports again, but mine was at a 3 out of 10. So my doctor told me you're likely to have a really great outcome. So I had 2 screws, 1 straight across my foot and 1 on an angle. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself. I would have to go under general anesthesia, numbing, and the surgery would be about an hour long. I was to go to the hospital at 4:30 in the morning. The surgery would be at 6:30, and I would be out by 9:30, I believe. It was going to be 6 more weeks of non-weight bearing, 4 weeks of adding weight back after the 6-week mark, which put me at January 14th to be exact, that I would be fully walking again at my estimation, which, praise the Lord, ended up coming several weeks sooner than that. I think 3 weeks sooner than that. But to be completely honest, I was scared to have surgery. I was scared to be under anesthesia. I was scared of the pain that I would experience, which, spoiler alert, it was never that bad. The pain was not that bad. They gave me heavy drugs, and when I was off the heavy drugs, it was really not that bad. It never hurt that bad. I don't know if it was prayer and the Lord, or if I just had this unrealistic expectation of my pain level. I'm not sure, but it never hurt that bad, so don't be worried about that. The other thing, when I found out I had surgery, the silver lining was I was gonna get to miss work for like another week, which excited me a lot. I had already missed 3 weeks of work, 1 week for vacation, 2 weeks just because of the injury, and I was about to miss almost a whole nother week. Ended up being a whole nother week because I got a worse cold than I had when the doctor called me to tell me I needed surgery. That was on the 31st. My cough worsened. I remember my parents were out of town, and remember, I could not open doors for myself. Like, I'm talking about like swinging doors that you have to use strength to hold it open and use crutches. Like, no way. I couldn't shower without a shower chair. I needed help to prepare food because I couldn't carry anything on crutches. So like, there have been other people in the world who have, you know, overcome harder circumstances, but I was like, I'm gonna have people take care of me because I'm not doing that by myself. My parents went out of town for a Florida State football game, and I stayed with my grandma the weekend before surgery, and I had this horrible cough, a horrible cold. I am like, there's, you know, the mucus, all the stuff, went through boxes of tissues, like lost my voice. It was, and I also had my period. And what was fantastic is you can't take ibuprofen leading up to surgery because it has something that thins your blood, I believe. You can take Tylenol, but you can't take ibuprofen, and ibuprofen is my drug of choice for cramp relief, and I couldn't take that, but I was taking Tylenol. But period, cold, lost my voice, couldn't stop coughing, incredibly sore throat, can't take traditional medicine because of surgery coming up. It was such a low moment. On top of that, I was scared that I was going into surgery. I was scared that I was gonna have to reschedule the surgery. And not only that, but it was all through workers' comp, and they had done a fantastic job of pushing all the paperwork through so that I could get the surgery in such a quick turnaround. But I didn't actually know what the process would be if I was too sick to go to surgery and they had to reschedule. I was really stressed, terrified, not excited. It was the lowest point of this whole experience, the weekend before surgery. So my surgery was scheduled for Tuesday, November 5th, which was also election day. Have fun. But I was supposed to go to work on that Monday, but I ended up staying home because I was still recovering from the cold, and honestly, I didn't want to keep doing this like go to work, leave work, go to work, be out of work for a week thing. I was just over it. I just wanted to heal and then go back. But on November 4th, the day before surgery, I was home by myself because parents were at work, brother was at school, and I remember reading my Bible, and I felt like the Lord gave me Psalm 30 verse 5, which is in some translations, sorrow may last for the night, but joy comes in the morning. And at the moment, I felt like that was just in the grand scheme of my life, like sorrow lasts for the night. Like, this experience is sorrowful, it's sad, I can't do the things that I want to do. I have a whole like house that I rent that I can't live in right now, and I loved where I lived. I loved my neighborhood. I loved riding my bike. I loved cooking for myself. I loved going downtown to the market on Saturdays and getting coffee. All these things I couldn't do, and I felt like it was like, you know, this season is unfortunate and it sucks, but joy comes in the morning. Like, this will end. And I was kind of thinking of it in terms of like this year will end because it was coming to the close of 2024. I was like, I had enough of this year. I'm ready for it to end. And I felt like the Lord was saying, in the new year, it's a fresh start. There's going to be joy in the morning. Like, that is the morning. Like, look forward to that and all the promise and all the excitement to come in the new year. But it turned out that that verse, it was true in that context, and I have seen it to be true in that context, but even more than that, looking back on the day of surgery, it was even more true. So my surgery is on November 5th. I had to be to the hospital at 4:30 in the morning, and you had to shower the night before and the morning of with antibacterial soap. So I had to wake up at like 3:30, take a shower. It was awful, and I felt really anxious. I hadn't really coughed through the night, which I was very grateful for. I felt like the Lord had healed me from that cold. And nevertheless, I woke up and I could not really get to a place of peace. I was stressed, I was anxious, I was not excited. I was still on my period. I couldn't drink water. I remember that being a thing. I was like, Mom, you've got to confiscate my water bottle because I carry it around 24/7. And it's 40 ounces. Like, this is crazy. But I carry this around everywhere I go and drink it all the time. And also, I got this one with a handle on it when I was on crutches because I could carry it around while I was on crutches. Fun fact, it was on clearance at Marshall's for like 12 bucks. Anyway, my mom confiscated my water bottle so that I wouldn't drink any water. And off we go to the hospital. All of the nurses that I worked with were amazing. The first nurse that I had brought me to the room, and then another nurse comes in, checks me in, is like, you haven't eaten for the past, like, since after midnight, right? I'm like, no, I haven't. I did everything I was supposed to do. She's like, did you shower with antibacterial soap this morning? Yes, I did. And then she goes to start the IV, which was horrible. And I didn't realize I hated needles so much, but I do. So the way that they did it was they felt around, they were gonna insert it on my right hand, and she couldn't find my vein or vessel. I'm not sure. I think it's your vein. Oh, it's an IV, intravenous. Okay. I did take health science class in high school. Tried to insert it here, couldn't find a place, so she didn't stick me. It goes to this hand, I believe. Was looking for a place. The doctor came in while she was looking for a place to debrief me or to brief me for surgery, and I couldn't pay attention to anything he was saying because I was in so much pain. She stuck me and then was like feeling around with the needle inside my hand, and she could not find where to stick it. And she's like, this is why you have to drink water because it makes your veins bigger. And I was like, you don't understand how much water I drink. But I haven't drank since after midnight because I wasn't supposed to. And my mom told her that. She's like, this girl drinks water like nobody else. So I don't know what the problem is. So she feels around there, can't find it there, goes back to this hand, finally gets it. I was crying, like it was bad. Doctor comes in, doctor leaves. He could tell that I was nervous. He like pat my strong foot and was like, we're gonna get you all put back together. And I was like, okay. Then I think they took my mom out of the room. The anesthesiologist and 2 more nurses came in, and this is the part that I was so nervous about, but they walked me through anesthesia, and I was like, so am I gonna go under before or after you put the numbing shot in my leg? Because I didn't want to feel another needle go into my body. I wanted them to do it when I was asleep. And they were like, oh, well, you're not gonna be under, you're just gonna be in a light sleep. And so then I start freaking out. My heart's probably racing, the monitor's probably freaking out. I don't know, it's probably dramatic, but they were like, you're gonna be in a light sleep. So I start freaking out internally. I'm like, what if I wake up during surgery? What if I remember it? And then they were like, I was like, so but are you gonna put the needle in my leg while I'm sleeping or while I'm awake? And they were like, oh, it'll be after you're asleep. And then they come with the needle and they stick it in my leg right there while I'm awake, and I remember it. And I'm like, they just lied to my face. And the next thing I knew, I was waking up from surgery, which was one of the most bizarre phenomenon I have ever had. Waking up, like the last thing I knew, like I didn't realize the IV they put in me had the anesthesia in it. For some reason, I thought it was something they put over your face that you breathe in, like chloroform or something. I don't know what I expected, but that's not what I expected. I thought they were gonna roll me into the surgery room and then put me to sleep, but that's not what happened. And the next thing I knew, I was waking up. They stabbed my leg, and then I woke up. And I was next to a bunch of other people who had just come out of surgery, and they were like, it's time to wake up, your surgery is over. And all I remember thinking is, thank you, Lord, that I made it through. Thank you, Jesus. I kept saying under my breath over and over, and also that I could feel my foot. And I remember them saying, you're not gonna feel your leg for a day, maybe after surgery. And I was like, I can feel it. It didn't hurt really, but I could feel it. And I wanted pain meds because I was scared of the pain. And they gave me pain meds. They had given me a pill for nausea before surgery, before anesthesia. And they gave me one right when I woke up because they were like, you might be nauseous because anesthesia does that to people, and we're gonna give you this so that you're not nauseous. And they asked me if I wanted anything to drink right when I woke up, and I was like, I just want some water. And they were like, water might make you throw up, so how about a soda? And I was like, okay, ginger ale. So they gave me a mini can of ginger ale, and they rolled me into the recovery room. My mom came up. This is when Psalm 30 verse 5 comes back into play, because it was like the sorrow, the fear, the uncomfortable feelings were all like, you know, that morning when it was still dark outside and I was feeling anxious, and then as soon as surgery was over, it was like the joy, like the peace. The joy comes in the morning. That is kind of how I felt. But I also remember that people had said when you wake up from anesthesia, you're often loopy, like when people get their wisdom teeth out. I have not had my wisdom teeth out, so I don't know how my body reacts to anesthesia, but I expected to be loopy. I was completely clear-headed. I was not loopy at all. I remember everything, and I wasn't out of it. I wasn't acting drugged up or anything like that. So we go home. My mom asked if I wanted anything to eat. I just had some cinnamon toast with butter and cinnamon sugar on it. That's all I could stomach. And I looked at my phone finally once I got back to the house, and I had so many messages from people, like family, a coworker, friends from church, so many people texting me that they were praying for me while I had been in surgery. And I just felt so blessed that all these people from all parts of my life were thinking about me and praying for me. And it just further emphasized my thank you Lord moment. So another interesting thing is the pain med that they put me on was oxycodone, which I was like, oh my gosh, that's a heavy drug. That's a I don't remember what it's called. Opioid. I'm on an opioid. I'm on a heavy drug, which I know is nothing to play around with, but I was prescribed it from surgery, so I took it, and it made me conk out. Like, I would fall asleep for 2 hours after taking one pill. And so my life for the next 2 days was take a pill. I think it was every 6 hours. Take a pill, 30 minutes, then you're out. You wake up 2 hours later. So I would put on a movie that I had already seen, so I wasn't trying to stay up because I didn't know what happened. I always knew what happened. I would put on a movie, 30 minutes later, I'm out, and then I would wake up, and then the credits would roll. And that was my life for 2 or 3 days. My work office ladies sent me flowers the first day, and then my best friend Annie came over that night and brought me a care package. And then the next day, the women's group from my church, I'm on the leadership team, and they had met that day, and they sent over flowers and a card they all signed, which was really sweet, and I felt so blessed. Also, something that I forgot to mention is they told me to take laxatives because I'm not sure if it was I think it was the anesthesia, but it could have been the oxy that prevents you from going number 2. And so they were like, you need to take laxatives so you don't get constipated. So I did that. Really only like 2 doses. And I might say this later in the video, but I was told by a coworker that had ankle surgery right before I had foot surgery, don't eat salty foods when you're in a splint, which I was in a splint coming out of surgery. I couldn't get it wet for 2 weeks. I had a 2-week follow-up appointment, which was really great because I looked forward to it. And I knew like there's a new milestone to look forward to, but don't eat salty foods when you're in a splint because your swelling foot will expand even more and it won't have anywhere to go and it's gonna hurt and you can't do anything about it till it gets out of your system. So just avoid the salty foods and thank me later. So my surgery was on Tuesday. Friday morning, so 3rd day after surgery, I had not really eaten dinner because my dad and brother went out to dinner. They were going to bring me something, but they went to like a sports bar grill place and everything there is salty, so I didn't want anything to eat. And I had cereal for dinner, which is a very light dinner, and then I think I took a pill. I woke up at 5 a.m. and I took another pill because it was time and I didn't want to skip. I didn't want any time to pass because I didn't want to feel any pain, and I got this terrible headache. I'm not a person who gets migraines or terrible headaches. I've probably had 3 in my life, this being one of them, where you cannot open your eyes, you're sensitive to light, and then that morning, you know, the sun's out, it's like 8 a.m. my mom's getting ready for work and I was supposed to stay there alone that day. I got nauseous and I threw up like 3 times and I was like, I am having a reaction to this drug, I don't know what to do. So I called the doctor's office and they took a note basically to send to the doctor, and then most of the day passes and I don't hear anything. And I'm like, I am having an allergic reaction. I'm 3 days post-op. I cannot be off drugs, but I don't want to take ibuprofen because then if I get another prescription, then I can't take it until I'm off the ibuprofen. I don't know if I'm allowed to take ibuprofen because the blood thinning aspect. I don't know. I didn't want to do anything wrong. I finally called them back at like 3 o'clock that day, and I'm like, hey, any word on that message that I sent? And they're like, the doctor hasn't gotten back with us yet, but let me call up there. Do you want me to call up there? I was like, please. So they called me in. It wasn't my doctor, but another doctor in the unit called me in, a anti-nausea med and a different pain med, which ended up being hydrocodone dash something, I think, but it was hydrocodone. So my mom and my grandma go to pick that up for me. I took it, and this one had the side effect where basically I was like high, but not that high, just a little high, which was like I felt spaced out, and I like lights were really bright, sounds were really loud. It was weird. I ended up going to a Friendsgiving on this pill. I wasn't driving. I wouldn't drive while taking this. My friend was driving me, and I took the pill, and it was a weird time, and I ended up falling asleep. So I get on this one. I don't have the sleepies anymore, but I do have this spaced out feeling, which was really weird. And I was weaned off of all the pain meds by the Monday after surgery, which ended up being Veterans Day, November 11th. So I wasn't at work that day, but I knew I had to be off of all the meds by the time I went back to work. And I went back to work on November 12th, which was a week after my surgery. And a lot of things I read said you need to be on bed rest for 2 weeks after surgery, but my doctor said I could go back after a week, and I was like, I don't have any reason to argue with him, so I guess we'll do that. And I was put on basically admin assistant duty because our admin assistant had left while all of this was going on with me. She moved, and they put me at front desk because that was the job that I was at before I was the event coordinator in the office. And the next big milestone in my journey was November 20th. I got to go back for my follow-up appointment. I was so excited. I counted down the days and the hours until this appointment came because I was finally going to get the splint off, see what the damage was under there, and I cannot explain. It was the best day. It was also awful because I didn't think about it, but as well as taking off the splint, they also took out the stitches, and that was the worst pain of the whole experience. I didn't even think that it was gonna hurt. I didn't even think about it. For all I knew, they put dissolvable stitches in my foot, but there were lots of stitches. I don't know how many because there are 3 incisions. When they took the splint off, they had to tear the gauze. It was very weird. They tore the gauze. It was wrapped in an ace bandage, and underneath it was layers and layers of gauze. And they didn't cut it. They just gently tore it off. And I am not fond of the sight of blood. I'm not fond of needles. I'm not fond of pain. And I have been off of all pain meds. I wasn't taking ibuprofen or anything 2 weeks after the fact. And when I went in, the either nurse or medical assistant, I think it was a medical assistant that was with me, asked if I had taken any pain meds that day. I was like, no. She was like, do you have any pain meds with you? And I was like, no, I don't need any. And I was like, that's a little weird. Is this gonna hurt? And the doctor comes in. Oh, they had taken the splint off already. They took the splint off and the stitches were still in there. They were like, this is healing up great. I'm like, what are you talking about? I look like Frankenstein. It's all stitched up. It looks bloody and it's wrinkled, and there's a big X and marker on my foot that the doctor did before he did the surgery, and it looks horrible. But the doctor said it was healing great, and he was like, you're gonna get the stitches out right now. I can't let you walk on it for another 4 weeks, which I was already prepared for. He was like, you're doing great. So he leaves, medical assistant comes back in to take the stitches out, and they were so tight that in cutting the stitches, she also cut my skin, which is not medical malpractice or anything. It just was the way that they were in there, but under no pain med, it hurt really bad that she had the little scissors that were cutting the stitches, also cut my skin. There was blood. It was bad. I had to have her stop for a minute, and I was sweating. I was crying. It was horrible. And the first one was the worst. Though the first one was on the side of my foot. The other 2 were not as bad, praise the Lord. And once I made it through that, it was the best day. And I was told to wear the boot. After that, the boot was in the car. I did not wear it out of the place, but there was orange, I forgot what it's called, but they put orange stuff that was an antiseptic or something on your leg before surgery, and it was all underneath the splint. It was all over my knee when I came out of surgery, and I wiped wiped it down with a baby wipe, but it was all over my leg. The doctor also told me to work on using a belt. My handy dandy belt is right here. And he was like, put it on the end of your foot like this and pull backward like that. And it'll help you with range of motion, even though you're still non-weight bearing, you're not in PT yet. That was what he told me to do. He told me to work on that. And of course I am a rule follower. And I'm like, I will do whatever you tell me to do. I will do whatever it takes to get this thing healed up faster. I remember getting out of the hospital that day. We were waiting for the valet to bring the car around, and I have not shaved this leg in 2 weeks. So there's that part. And then there was the loss of muscle mass, where at this point it had been 7 weeks since the injury, and my calf muscle basically didn't exist anymore. And I could put a picture up probably at what I was looking at when I came out of that doctor's appointment, but it was like whoosh, like it just didn't exist. And I took a video, which if it's not too gross, I could also maybe put that in. But I remember I had to go back to work, but then at the end of the day I was at my grandma's house and I held up my leg and I was pushing on my calf, and it was just jiggle. It was awful, but it was kind of funny. This is so embarrassing. Like, it's horrible. So that was a thing, and I remember my foot being really tender and it would tremble. If I held it out, my foot would tremble. I couldn't hold it up because it was so out of it. I showered. I was able to put it under the water. I didn't have to use a patch to keep it dry. That was also really weird, and I didn't want to press too hard on it because the skin was falling off. And I'll go into later in the video about all the things I used to help heal my skin, my foot, everything, but the skin was falling off. It was really, really gross. And something that was of note was to not have to use the shower sleeve anymore for my foot was amazing. I don't know if I even mentioned earlier, but when I was in the splint, I couldn't get my foot wet. So the cast or the splint wet, I couldn't get that wet. And so I used this big sleeve that suctions all the water off of your leg so that you don't get it wet. And it was a pain in the butt, and I had to have help getting it on and off. Didn't have to use that anymore once the splint was off. The next big milestone moment in this healing journey was my 6-week follow-up on December 19th. And this was the big one because this was where I was getting an x-ray, and then the doctor was going to review the x-ray with me and tell me that I could go back to weight bearing, which, as I had known from watching a lot of YouTube videos because I'm too curious for my own good, or maybe just curious enough for my own good, who knows. It's a process. You don't just go from not walking on your foot for 10.5 weeks, almost 11 weeks, to just walking like a normal person. And I knew that, and I expected it to take 4 weeks. It took 1 week to go from no weight bearing to walking in a boot. It took 1 week, which is a miracle, I think. And that walking without crutches came on Christmas Day, which Christmas miracle, praise the Lord. But the way it worked was the doctor was like, okay, this x-ray looks perfect is the word that he used. This is exactly what you want to see. You are cleared for 100% weight bearing. And I was like, what are you talking about? I thought it was going to take 4 weeks. You told me it was going to take 4 weeks. He was like, oh, let me explain what I mean by that. I don't just mean like throw out your crutches and boot and go on with your life. I mean, as tolerated, you can weight bear. He said you're gonna go with your crutches and the boot and you're gonna put weight on your foot, but you're still gonna use the crutches, which I'd heard from YouTube that that's how it works. And then after a week of that, maybe you can go down to 1 crutch. And then after that, as you feel comfortable, you can transition without crutches. You can transition out of the boot. Whatever is comfortable for you, that's what you should do. Because you are not gonna re-injure yourself. Like, it would be really, really hard, almost impossible for you to re-break your foot by putting weight on it at this point. It's just about your comfort level. So I go boot, crutches for a week. A week later, it was Christmas Day. And my brother, who had ACL surgery a few years ago, was like, Emily, you just have to do it. You just have to, you know, it's a little scary, but you gotta go for it. So I went to 1 crutch partway through the day on Christmas. And then by the end of the day, my parents were like, I think you can do it. I think you can throw out the crutch and walk on the boot. I was like, I'm scared. So I tried it. I have a video. Maybe I'll put it in.
Look at
you.
Look at that.
Good job. It's okay. Woohoo!
I was walking without crutches 1 week later, which was amazing. I could carry stuff again. It was awesome, but I still had to be in the boot. And I was also really nervous about what shoes I would wear because I knew that arch support was important and I didn't need to walk without arch support. So I ordered arch support tennis shoes. These are New Balance 880s. I actually had researched them, and then I went to a place locally where they fit you for good shoes for your feet, and they had also recommended these, and I really wanted New Balances, so I ordered these online after I went to that place. They felt really good. I also ordered these slippers, which supposedly were supportive. They're wool, they're comfortable, they're from Austria. They're not really arch support, they're kind of soft, but I use them around the house. I don't really walk barefoot. I also ordered a pair of flats that's down on the floor that are supposedly arch support flats. They have a lot thicker sole than most flats, and I figured when I feel comfortable I can wear those to work because you're really supposed to dress up for my job. Right now I'm approved to wear these because they're for my feet. I was also ordered 6 weeks of PT when I went back to the doctor on December 19th, twice a week for 6 weeks, 12 sessions total. It with workers' comp and the doctor's office not communicating to workers' comp initially, it took about a week, 2 weeks. It took 2 weeks to get into PT after I went to the doctor, so I was a little bit behind, but I felt like the Lord was like, don't worry about being behind, you're gonna heal just fine. So I've been in PT for like 3 weeks now. I go tomorrow again, and honestly a lot of this stuff has been really easy for me, and I've not felt challenged until about a week ago. They started giving me more standing exercises because a lot of the things they have you do are resistance with a resistance band, laying down, stretching your calf muscle, doing range of motion exercises, which using my handy dandy belt for weeks before I went to PT was very helpful with my flexibility. They test you, they measure angles that you can go, and because it's workers' comp, they retest you. So when I go tomorrow, they're going to retest me to see how I've improved, because workers' comp doesn't want to pay for it if you're back up to speed for where you can work. You're not necessarily going to stay in PT until you can run again, because your job doesn't require you to run, but they will pay for it until you get completely up to speed with what you need to do for your job, which, you know, I'm grateful. I don't have to pay for any of this, and I understand why people stop going to PT, because they just set you up on stuff and they make you do the same stuff when you're not there. Which now I'm doing different stuff that has equipment that I don't have at home, and they said to keep doing the initial resistance band, range of motion stuff that you can do sitting down with very little equipment. But generally at the beginning, they would just set you up with the same exercises you were doing at home, and then they wouldn't even watch you do it. And you would be like, okay, I'm done. Like, are they paying attention to me? I don't really know. I get why people stop going, but I do know that it's important to keep doing your exercises so that you can fully heal, which I plan to make a full recovery. Okay, so January 3rd, I started PT. I have a list on my computer so you can just hear the pacing of things. I started PT January 3rd. January 4th, I was back into 2 shoes for the first time, no more boot. My biggest goal was to shower without a shower chair, because that was the point at which I would go back to my own house from staying at my parents' house, showering with a shower chair. I didn't want to take a shower chair into my house because I do have a roommate, and I didn't want to deal with tiny bathroom, big shower chair, dry it off, put it in my bedroom, put it back every time I have to shower. Did not want to deal with that, so I was working towards showering without a shower chair. On January 8th, I showered without the shower chair, but I wasn't washing my hair, so it wasn't very long that I was standing on 2 feet barefoot. Barefoot is more difficult because the skin on your foot is all new and fresh, and it's sensitive to temperature, so it's really cold. And also there's no calluses, it's very bare, and also it's sore because you broke it. You haven't used those muscles. You're working on them in PT, but you haven't really used them in a long time. So I finally showered, washed my hair, full shower with no shower chair, shaved my legs and everything on January 10th, which I believe was 3 months after injury, 2 months after surgery. On January 12th, I took a walk around my neighborhood, the park in my neighborhood, beautiful, glorious. I'd been dreaming of that for weeks, and it's something I used to do often. That felt so good. I'm still doing PT exercises every day. Today is January 23rd, I think. And I have only skipped 1 day of PT exercises because, girl, we've been in snow day mode here in the Southeast, and life has been topsy-turvy. So I forgot my exercises 1 day and I did double the next day, but I'm like an A+ student who is like, I'm gonna do everything they tell me to do. I'm gonna heal this puppy up. I had a little bit of a limp. It's almost gone now, to be honest. I don't walk around without shoes as a rule, but I can shower normally. Praise the Lord. I'm planning to move back into my house tomorrow, which is nearly 4 weeks after this whole thing started. I go back to the doctor on February 10th, which is in 2 weeks, maybe a little more than 2 weeks. They say that it takes 6 to 12 months to heal from this injury. That's what my physical therapist said. I'll back up. My doctor said it'll take 4 months to heal completely, which 4 months is beginning of March. I'm planning to play kickball with my church in May, June, so I'm planning to be fully healed by then. I believe for full healing and no more pain. There is pain still, but I'm believing that I'm not fully healed yet and that that's gonna go away. Regardless of what the standard or the normal is, I'm believing for full healing. Before I finish up, I wanna go into a few stats. I'm losing light really, really bad, but a few bullet points just to like cap off all of this. I was nearly 11 weeks non-weight bearing total. It was 1 month between injury and surgery. Literally October 5th was injury, November 5th was surgery, which is bizarre, crazy. And also the doctor said usually at that point, your conditions deteriorated a lot more than mine had. So I think that was another little miracle. And I'm nearly 4 months out of my own house at this point. Again, moving back in tomorrow, but October 5th to January 24th is almost 4 months, which is crazy. I lived there 8 months, was out 4 months. Now I'm going back. A roommate moved in while I wasn't there. Craziness. Anyway. Next, I'm gonna put in a clip of things that I used for healing my body. I filmed this before, so the lighting is different, but things that I did to help my skin heal, help with inflammation, heal it the natural way. Also, don't knock ibuprofen when you need it. Just do whatever you need to do. But that sums up the story of my Lisfranc injury, surgery, foot fracture, the whole shebang. If you have any questions, leave them down below. But I know that watching videos like this was really, really helpful for me when I was going through it, because oftentimes they miss the Lisfranc injury initially and they tell you that nothing's broken. And if you fall and you hear a crack, and they tell you that nothing's broken based on an x-ray, always go for a second opinion. Maybe wait a little time till the swelling goes down, but use your best discretion. But this was my experience. I hope that it was helpful. Leave a comment below if you've been through something similar. I would love to see that. And to end this beautifully long video, see you next time. Hope this helps. Bye.